Like we are live and ready, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a public meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, February 10th, 2025. Time is 4:40 p.m. and this is a work session. We have one item for continued discussion. That's item B1, reconsideration of application to rezone waterfront resub number 1, lots 2 through 4, block 13. And specifically addressing section 18.97.010 B7 of the Seldovia City Code, best interest of the public. And who wants to take that one? The clerk or the manager to get us started?
I'll take that one, Mr. Mayor. So you will see in your packet, and this is a carryover conversation from the last work session prior to the January 7th regular meeting. Hopefully our technical issues are resolved and we don't see those again tonight, as well as some additional information that the Seldovia City Council asked me to bring forward and that pertaining to the comprehensive plan. But first, I'd like to start with in the packet for the work session on page 3, there's a draft memo. I should have put draft on it, but really the intent of this memo was we heard at the beginning of the work session that it would have been nice to have the table filled in. And so during the work session, we took notes on the conversation that we heard, both opposing and in support of the application to rezone and the reconsideration to rezone, and just took this table down 1 through 7, the decision-making tool as provided from the Seldovia Planning Commission. You can see, the number 1 column being the criteria, followed by the description of each criteria item, the Planning Commission finding, and then put in the comments that we heard in support of the application to rezone under column 4, and the comments we heard in opposition in column 5, so that can hopefully help just organize that conversation a little bit better, provide a little bit better of a guide. I did take the liberty of adding in on column 4 under criteria 1, some of the language that was provided under the comprehensive plan, page 33, as referred to in column 3 by the Planning Commission finding. And then also in columns for criteria 3 and columns for the approval and denial, the impact of that change, just because that hadn't been fully called out before on how that zoning would differ. There's some setback changes, some minor height changes, and use changes that would go with that. So I also put in anywhere where the comments were applicable that would fit under those criteria. And then you'll see at the back.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can, Vivian.
Yeah. If I could request that if Heidi could screen share her documents, that'd be great for the public and for those of us who are online.
Yeah, let me sign in. It'll just be a quick moment.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, signed in. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. Make sure I'm on the right one.
Yep, looks like you got it.
Okay, there we go. So I am in the work.
Minimize your tools on the left there, just X that out.
Yep, I'm working on it. I got
Right.
a couple of pop-ups happening right this second. So there we go. Okay. So in the work session packet, if you go to page 3, no, I don't want to do it that way. I'll just scroll. You'll see that memo with the 5 columns, and it's the criteria number, the description of the criteria, planning commission finding, and then a column that's a city council finding for approval and a city council finding for denial. This really was taking the points that we heard from the work session and the meeting and from the public, and putting them back in to this document. So please, as a draft, change anything that you want to change. If anything doesn't make sense or looks different than what it should be, please provide that feedback. I did try to send it out beforehand. That way everybody had the option to comment on it. You can see I did add in under the approval column the comments that we received, or not, sorry, the comments received upon review of the comprehensive plan as directed by the Seldovia City Council. I did add in the comment in the plan on page 33, speaking to the preferred land use plan, and that's that third bullet down in the second column from the right, and it's that per 2014 Seldovia Comprehensive Plan. 35 years later, only a handful of properties on Main Street have overcome the economic challenge of sustaining a viable year-round business. At the same time, waterfront commercial properties are attractive for seasonal residents, despite urban renewal plat restrictions and local zoning ordinances that require commercial use. This makes downtown quiet, especially in the winter, and locks in building designs and land use patterns that detract from a thriving Main Street atmosphere. A number of residents expressed a desire for this comprehensive plan to resolve the issue. And I should have stated before this comment, there was a comment about parking, maybe a further justification. So that was included under this justification criteria under approval, and that an additional evaluation on the economy of Seldovia and how much business the waterfront can support may be warranted, because those were comments that we heard during the discussion. Other things that we heard was that there really wasn't a justification provided other than the preferred land use that is cited from the 2014 comp plan, and that the business owners or the property owners intended to still continue to have a business and that they weren't intending to change their purpose. So you'll see that in the 5th column. And then if you scroll down, I also put in the other references in the 2014 plan, comprehensive plan regarding zoning, just so that you guys have that piece of information of what that comprehensive plan said. It, talked about revising the administrative policy to increase the public's role in reviewing and evaluating land use and development policy, encouraging multiple uses on individual parcels, particularly in the downtown core, permit some degree of waterfront residential use, but limit it to upper floors and commercial and industrial districts. And this is all word for word grabbed and copied and put into this document. Emphasize retail, dining, and public open space and accommodation uses in the town center along Main Street, particularly between Fulmore Avenue and English Drive, and prevent part-time residential uses from displacing and precluding a vibrant business district. So that's in the approval column. If you go down, there was discussion on, the planning commission, the Seldovia City Council accepting the findings 1 through 6, and then focusing on number 7 criteria. So just in that approval, planning commission finding accepted. For number 2, also that it is accepted but incorporated the comments that there was a lack of confirmation from the community and public that that was the desire for these properties to be rezoned. And I'll touch on this a little bit further when we get into the comprehensive plan discussion. But many comments received were in support or was supported the opposite of the rezone and then wanted the properties to be to stay the same as they were zoned. Were some of those comments. And then another one was a comprehensive plan and zoning code update and review has been discussed for several years and was included as a priority in the 2024 and 2025 capital improvement plans with a desire to emphasize and ensure compatibility between the Seldovia zoning code and comprehensive plan, which is why we've brought the comprehensive plan review back up into this discussion, which will be the next part once we get through this memo. Number 3, I did take the liberty of including, like I said, just to bring forward that there is an impact or could be an effect on the area because of the change in zoning, whether that's negative or positive. Is not for, I'm not going to determine that, but I did want to show that it does remove the minimum square foot requirement for the lot, which is a 5,000 lot, 5,000 square foot for commercial business. That's no longer required in waterfront commercial residential. However, there is a open space requirement. Parking requirements still stay relatively the same, depending on if you're running a commercial business or residential business. The setbacks are decreased from 10 feet from the road to 5 feet from the row if the change is made. A requirement for deck and dock setback in the small boat harbor would need to be added to the WCR because that's currently, we don't have any properties that border the harbor in the waterfront commercial residential at this point. Maximum building heights, there is a language change. I don't know how much this would actually impact a business because it still is from that foundation point. And I believe it's more defined for buildings that are building out on pilings out over the slough. So it's from the highest foundation corner not to exceed an overall height of 38 feet. Whereas on commercial business district, it's just 28 feet measured from the center line of Main Street for the building height. And then you can see here in column 3 that land use changes include all of these changes that are become less restrictive, except for the bottom 2, which are manufacturing, fabricating, and assembly goes from a conditional use to not permitted, and clinics go from a permitted use to conditional use. So those 2 would be more restrictive, but the rest become less restrictive. And so in column 4 under approval, made the counter remark that new land use provisions provide for more flexibilities for the property owners, which is something that was provided by the Seldovia Planning Commission. You look down under 4, Planning Commission findings accepted in both categories, and those can change if you guys have any additional comments or points that you want to add to this. Number 5, same, Planning Commission finding accepted. 6, same. 7, we left blank because that is the basis, the majority of the conversation. So depending on what determination the council makes today, we can fill that in. And then additional determinations, just so that we didn't lose these points that were in the discussion. And again, sorted into a support and opposition. So under the support, the plan was approved by the city in 2014 and the city failed to implement. The rezoning supports these 3 current property owners who have invested in the community. There's not a strong desire or market to purchase and develop these properties as a commercial business. One property sat empty for several years until purchased by the existing property owner. There's a limited customer base in Seldovia and limited revenue for businesses. And then a moratorium or conditional use could be set on the properties to be rezoned WCR for a time certain or until they changed ownership. However, properties currently meet or are working towards existing zoning requirements and do not intend to change purpose, eliminating the justification for a conditional use. I just wanted to make sure to call that out. And then in the column for in opposition, the public has demonstrated non-consensus in support of the zoning amendment. And we again saw that in the finding from the original finding from the Planning Commission, that there was not consensus from the public. And when we've seen that from the public comments that we've received. The intent of the preferred land use scenario and the plan was to explore this future scenario and includes more changes than rezoning these 3 properties, including a loss of the city's commercial zone. And that one was also one that I implemented after having a discussion with an individual who helped form the 2014 comprehensive plan. And you'll see more of a note on it in the memo on the comprehensive plan. But I did want to point out, and I pointed out in that memo, that there's been a big focus on the rezone for these properties. But if you look at the preferred land use, that's not the only thing that changes, right? This is something that the applicants have desired, those property owners have desired. So they brought it forth to the council. But when we're talking preferred land use for the community and rezoning for the community, that scenario also included the whole commercial area by the school being rezoned as residential, that the area by council member Keithley's house be rezoned as an enterprise or more of an industrial area. So all those buildings on Spruce Street, that the buildings across the street, across the bridge become a rural residential zone. And it includes also zoning for the community outside of the city that can be seen on that map as rural residential. So I just wanted to bring back that to everybody's attention, that while that is the immediate discussion is rezoning these 3 properties based on what is placed in the comprehensive plan, that wasn't the only intent of and I shouldn't say intent, that's not the right word. That wasn't the only change noted in the preferred land use. So there are others that could come up on the docket in the future. And then the final determination is left blank there, depending on how the discussion goes. So if everything else in the packet is the information that you had prior, comment from one of the applicants, and then the rest of the information, or my comment back to the applicant. If you guys don't have any questions on this and you want, I'll jump into the discussion on the comprehensive plan, but I'll just pause in case there's anything you guys want to talk about further related to that memo or any of the discussion on the rezoning from the last meeting, and then I can jump into comprehensive plan whenever you guys are ready. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Heidi. Any opening comments, questions, thoughts from council on the filled in version of the document now? And if you guys recall from last meeting, yeah, I just didn't want to start with a blank slate when we'd already discussed this 2 or 3 times. I was hoping we'd capture, a number of the comments or thoughts that we had as we moved through this. And I think Heidi's done a pretty good job with that. So if there's, if you don't agree with something, or, you want something added or changed, we can certainly add that. I think the big thing here is, there's a couple of these. Item 1 and 7 are the 2 I think we've pretty much agreed on 1, although there's still non-consensus to it. And 7, we definitely have non-consensus, so, and no surprise there. So I guess we'll just leave it at that and open it up to any thoughts or comments, questions.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi, for putting this document together. It's very helpful. I wasn't sure, there might be a couple of things that I saw in the 3rd column over that I thought maybe would be in the 4th column over. But maybe I'm just interpreting it differently. But I want to make it, I really appreciate the fact that the council needs to realize that this is one portion of a rezoning, and that the implications of other areas around town are implied through this process. So that's a big thing to think about. I think there's a lot of groundwork to be done. I'm still not in favor, even with all the reading I've done. I don't see that there's any reason why to change the rezoning. I think it was, and if you would bring up that note, I couldn't find, I read it earlier today, Heidi. It was a great note from the people who were part of the process. Somebody was maybe a staff person and somebody else, but what they wrote down in their little summary, I think it's very important that the council, if they didn't read it, to make sure that it's read to them or pointed out. It really makes a difference as far as how you interpret this process we've had. But thank you for putting this together. And again, I think there's a whole lot of homework that needs to happen. And if we do one place, then we're looking, it's a process that we need to look at. And again, if you look at the comprehensive plan, the idea of it is what jumps out at me constantly as I read through it: economy, 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 and what we can do to help promote that. And so giving away the potential of 3 businesses, again, I'll beat the dead horse. I just don't see how we should do that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Mayor Campbell,
Yeah, go ahead,
I
John.
guess nobody's gonna say anything. I'm basically in the same spot I've always been here. I don't see any reason not to go along with the planning commission's recommendation here and move forward. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, John. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to move on to the discussion of about the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, we can go through that, talk a little bit about that here. Maybe that'll spur a little more conversation here.
Mr. Mayor. So during the February 27th regular city council meeting, I was directed to do a draft update of the 2025 comprehensive plan with any additions or edits based on where we are now. Also included in this packet, it's a supplemental packet because it is large. Comprehensive plan is large. Is a draft of the audit that the Seldovia Planning Commission is recently finishing up about the implementation recommendations from the comprehensive plan. So they just recently went through all of the implementation recommendations. There's 42 of them, and provided a grade 1 through 4, 4 being the best, on how the city was accomplishing these goals. In addition to going through the plan, I will say that it is subjective in showing what the city has or hasn't done based on what knowledge we have as individuals. So I did provide some minor edits of things that we could update to make current to 2025. And then instead of striking out everything and moving things around, because it really should come from the community, what those goals and priorities are. I did something similar and just did a green, yellow, red kind of scoring chart. That green is things that the city is making great progress on. And in my subjective opinion, yellow were items that we have identified or that have been identified that are in plans, that there's some progress, but still a lot more could be done. And red, that there's really little or no progress. And I will just jump to real quick. And I don't have, let me see. I would have to stop the share and share this other page. Sorry, it's in your laydown because I've thought about it all weekend long and realized that The documents didn't really show what that overall. Let's see here. What the overall scoring, or I don't know, is the best way to word that, the overall effect that the city has had. Not or you that this that has come from the comprehensive plan. And so I'll jump to that real quick and then I'll jump back to the memo. And so that is in your lay down for the regular meeting. And I'm sorry, we'll get it up for the work session. After the memo that was provided that we just discussed, there is a Seldovia Comprehensive Plan progress report from the administrative review. And this was just, this is a summary of that red or green, yellow, red. And I want to point out, if you saw in that memo that was just up, so the Seldovia Comprehensive Plan consists of 5 elements, 24 goals. Under those goals are focus areas, and there's 80 of them. And then 42 recommendations in the back that adjoin each goal. And it's duplicative. You'll see them over and over again. In fact, 3 of the land use goals say that they apply to all of the implementation recommendations. So a lot happening in the plan. I did find that interesting that was one comment that the previous planning commission shared with me. Just out of the blue at the end of the conversation, she said, if you want to know one thing I would have to say about the the Seldovia Comprehensive Plan, is I would never organize it that way, because even as a very intelligent person, it was really hard to flip back and forth through the plan and see which implementation recommendations applied to which goal. So you have, like I said, elements, goals, focus areas under the goals, and the recommendations under that. That's 122 items that I went through and did a green, yellow, red on. Overall, I would say 35.4% of the plan is green, 62.4% of the plan is yellow, and 45% of the plan is red. And I wanted to just really call out those red items, because I think that's something we were talking about, is like, what hasn't the city done? Where hasn't the plan worked? So you'll see in this progress report, I didn't call out all of the items because that would be 120 items worth. But I'm happy to do this exercise again for any of the other colors if it helps. But for instance, under economy, there are 19 focus areas. 10 of them were green, 5 of them were yellow, 4 were red, and those were establish and maintain a youth mentoring culture, permit some waterfront residential use, but limit it to floors and commercial industrial districts. You'll see this one a few times. Coordinate tourist assets and programs with access and goals. Monitor economic conditions remaining flexible, adaptive, and resilient. There's 3 under the 3 and the red under transportation. That was coordinate water-based and land-based connections and infrastructure needs. Sorry, there's a typo in there. Actively pursue ground leases for hangars and other aviation-oriented activities at the airport. Monitor your land use actions near the airport for the airport compatibility. That really could be yellow because of a building permit and zoning. Like I said, it's subjective. And then again, you'll see it going down the red. There's 8 under land use, and that goes back to the revising the administrative policy, expanding municipal services beyond existing municipal boundaries only as a condition of annexation, permit some waterfront residential use, but limit it to upper floors. So we're seeing that item, it comes up several times in commercial and industrial districts. And I made a note that it was duplicative. Emphasize retail dining, public open space and accommodations. And I also pointed these ones out in the the rezoning memo. Increase and monitor public access to scenic resources, identify parcels for the city or housing authority to purchase or dedicate to facilitate housing development. That one we're kind of working towards, I think, with our lump and with our the inclusion in the CIP to look at rural professional housing. It's just not quite there, so I left it as red. Ensuring zoning allows upper floor residential use in town center. Consider design guidelines for town center and inner neighborhoods to assist building designer and efforts. Yeah, there's only one under community and HR focus areas. That was collaborate with the South Peninsula Hospital Service area. And there's 4 more under the environment focus area. So those are just the focus areas. And then underneath of them are the implementation. And again, you'll see that on page 2. And I also, what I did is I took the planning commission's report, their audit report, which is in the packet, the draft, just to compare where my green, red, yellow matched or didn't match the planning commission scores. And they did a 1 through 4. So I just said 4 is green. If they had more 4s than the other numbers or an equal number of 4s and 3s, I said 4 for green, 3 and 2s for yellow, and 1 for red, and actually came out pretty much even with them in that scoring, with the exception of under synergies. The planning commission was very generous and gave us 8 yellows and 2 reds, where maybe I was a little harsher and did 2.5 yellows and 7.5 reds. I guess I thought there was a lot more room for improvement there. And you can see that that's the airport lighting and enhancement. I know that we did put water and sewer improvements in the CIP as a future consideration. That Seldovia Street, Jackoff Bay Road, multi-use trail is something that we've recently started talking about, but again, have only made just very little progress. Enhance backcountry access, actively support youth and family. We have, the council has supported education initiatives in the past. Develop and implement a comprehensive tourism strategy. This could be included in the next CIP. Create and implement a collaborative economic strategy. That could be expanded in the CIP. It's in there now, but we haven't made a lot of progress towards it. Kachemak Bay Laboratory Campus and Research Reserve is in there, and improve land data. And then there's the 4 under contingencies, like waterfront truck route and secondary airport route, regional road connections, Seldovia Bay and Jackoff Bay water control, and local energy security and fuel cost strategy. So that just kind of gives you a rough idea of the things that we're not really working towards. And like I said, that's about 45%. That was 37.5 in the red out of 122 that we're not necessarily making progress towards. But the other, what is that, 74? Nope, that's more than that. 83 we are. So if that gives you kind of a rough idea of where that plan was, I will stop sharing and I'll go through this memo because that gives you some more information about the plan, and then we can go as deep as you guys want, or stop and go to conversation after that. But so back to that memo real quick. And this is in the supplemental. Okay. So as I said, I went through the plan, made some edits just on if we were going to update it, and then did a green, red, yellow, struck out a few items. They're in green that we've completed, like the water treatment plant. And what was the other one? It's down in the list here. So I'll just go through the summary of changes provided in that plan. As I said, we added language about the 2025 update process and timeline. Suggested updating the maps and the introduction with details from 2013 forward. It's really impressive, the amount of language in there. And I would say if overall, it's a fairly good guide, and the city has made decent progress on it. But there are some things in there that could use further vetting, or use a check-in with the community to see that's still the direction that they want to go. So with that, updating the vision based on that community feedback, reformat the comprehensive plan to more easily see recommended implementations. I put this in there before hearing from the previous planning commission member, and it's something that we've heard from our current planning commission members as well, is that it's not very easy to connect all of the pieces in the plan. So I did attempt that in a kind of a draft in the back to show how they all layered under, but I'm not going to call it out because I think it's just more confusing. But if you look at the Kenai Peninsula Boroughs Planning Commission, or sorry, the Kenai Peninsula Boroughs Comprehensive Plan, I think you could do something similar like that as a spreadsheet that just calls out the goals, and then the actions under the goals. And you could see them clearly all together in one place. That would make it a little bit more user friendly. So verifying again those and updating those community goals. These are just overall suggestions. Consider if sustaining a prosperous fishing fleet is still the #1 economic goal, and see and if some of those economic goals should be clearly tied in with land use goals, because there was some back and forth between those, which makes sense. Land use does tie in with economy. Consider including tax incentives, property tax or sales rebate, or as a goal or action under economy as noted in the land use desired future conditions. Really, I guess I won't go through this whole thing because it's not all relevant to the reconsideration, but you can see certainly there are some changes that would be applicable. I'll go down real quick to, as Council Member Rojas alluded to, I did, throughout this process, I spoke to 2 members who were actively involved in the creation and adoption of this plan. One was in the administrative office and one was from the Planning Commission, and received the following feedback regarding the inclusion of the preferred land use scenario, because we had that question of how did it get into this plan? And we heard maybe it shouldn't have been in this plan. So I asked that question of both these individuals that were pretty involved with the process, and received some of the comments back from the individuals that one of them said rezoning has been an issue in Seldovia since urban renewal. They both said the comp plan is just that, it's a plan. There's nothing to hold the city to carrying out everything that's in it. The majority of the work, they both also said the majority of the work on the plan was completed by a third party who captured what they heard through a robust public process. We heard about how they opened up, I heard about how they opened up a center next to the post office, and people could come in and they could give their opinions, and they had, different scenarios and visions on the wall, and they had a lot of feedback, and they came into town quite a few times, and they had a lot of opportunities to hear from the public. I also heard that even with the robust public process, not everyone's vision for the community would have been able to be captured, and that those who participated, mostly those who participated, really had a vested interest in what they wanted to see in the community, what that change was that they wanted. The intent of the preferred, this was one from one, that the intent of the preferred land use scenario was to explore the scenario further. And then I also noted in there that in a couple of the areas, the plan calls for a need for a slow and steady approach, including an implementation B resources and timeline, which I'm wondering if that's where they were trying to get at. Like, yeah, we want to look at this and explore it, but not necessarily if it's in the plan, are we going to jump and do it? Heard that the scenario was based on an idea of how the community was at the time in 2013, and that the format of the plan was hard to follow, like I mentioned. And lastly, and this one was helpful, was that the borough helped fund the plan, which we were aware of, through the provision of $50,000 in funding that the city matched in kind. So I did turn around with that, and I followed up with Kenai Peninsula Borough. And just as an aside, I talked to the planning department and was informed that funding could be made available for this update. So just throwing that out there. They didn't know how much at that time. I did get it should be based on inflation, with which I responded, sure, maybe to an extent, but all of these plans cost about the same, no matter the size of your community. So tell me what you've got in your budget and we'll see what we can work with. So that's exciting that we do have help from the borough to do this update. And then also I've had followed up with Alaska Municipal League before that. And they are committed to helping update the comprehensive plan. We talked about initial support being an updated snapshot of the community's demographics, which is something that CAPED, who I spoke to as well, is willing to help with. They hired a economist in the fall, and they did a pretty big deep dive for the whole of the borough, and they shared that with the Kenai Peninsula Borough Tourism Working Group. But so they'll drill down and do some of that for Seldovia. And then AML will help with a storyboard map web page for public input, with the public input planning and support, and the plan formatting at the end. And as I mentioned, also spoke with KPEB. So just wanted to make sure to throw that in there. You'll see enclosed is that 2014 comprehensive plan. There's a draft initial attempt to capture focuses and recommendations under each goal. I really don't recommend that document because it's too crazy. A summary of each recommendation and where we are with that recommendation that the Planning Commission used for their working audit documents, and then the Seldovia Planning Commission draft memo and audit of the 2014 Seldovia Comprehensive Plan. So I'll leave it there. Let me know if you need any more information. Hopefully that helps with the discussion. And yes, let me know if you have any questions.
All right. Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, obviously that was a lot of information. So I may have missed that in there. So if let's call it a 10-year snapshot of where, the initial plan and where we've come in 10 years, right? Report card, if you will, and or any community changes, going forward. What would the finished product look like? I mean, would we just have highlighted, use the original plan, change dates, et cetera, and then just would we rewrite entire sections, or would we leave it and then just add sections of bullets or new sections of language that's highlighted? Or in your mind, what would it look like? I guess I don't know if you've talked with anybody to see what an updated plan looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did speak with AML about this a little bit, and I've taken the liberty to look at a lot of different communities' comprehensive plans. Homer's going through an update right now. Kenai Peninsula Borough did an update in 2019. Dillingham just went through an update. And really what we're seeing, and AML made a note of this as well, is that these communities are updating every 5 to 10 years, and they are calling it an update from a previous plan. And ultimately the product does end up being a new version. I believe that a lot of the information in this plan is fantastic. The introduction information, the background information is fantastic and applicable. So being able to update that just with what has happened in the past 10 years and keeping that information moving forward, and then doing that check-in with the community. So maybe keeping the same format of the 5 elements, that's the economy, land use, transportation, community, human resources, and environment. But a check-in then on under those, what are the goals? Where are we at with them? And then a restructured format of what that implementation looks like so that it's more easily readable, and we can see those clear items, those actionable items under each goal. One thing the AML also said that I thought was interesting when looking at and reviewing the document is they said, wow, this really looks like more of a SEDS than a comprehensive plan. So it is, it's big. It is, it's a dream. It seems to me the more I've been in it, it really captured all of the kind of hopes and dreams that the community had. But it could be useful also then to go through and look at what is actually applicable for the city, what are things that are actionable that we can work on, and what are things, they separated out items and contingency, similar to how we did in our CIP of items that are future considerations of, these would be potentially amazing to see in the community, but maybe not in our scope, because there are definitely a few things I commented on here that is not in our scope to do that. Even though it's a whole overall vision for the community. So I guess I would say you'll probably see similar format in the beginning, a restructure in the end, but it will overall be a new document because it will be updated.
And so and I know the conversation's morphing a little bit, but obviously the discussions around the rezoning have kind of all brought us full circle to this discussion, right? And, basically, I think what we're seeing is that the arguments I'm seeing against, any changes and maybe even some that are for the changes are that regardless of if you're in support or opposition, that it's before we make a determination, maybe it's time to take a look at the comprehensive plan to see what the community wants. Because clearly there's been, I would say, a pretty dramatic shift from 2014 till now. And it's very clear not many things have changed in terms of, where we've come in the last 30 years. So, I mean, you can take that for whatever way you want, but yeah, I think this is probably warranted to have this just to go through this process and see what comes out of it. Is this something you think if we started this now, we could have done by the end of the year, or what's your just timeline on this? I mean, because I would not want this to drag out for 2 or 3 years or even 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excellent question. So in speaking with AML, there was a thought that definitely could be probably done in 6 months. So initially, I thought a year, and that really was because of this process of being able to do the review, but we did it. Or at least I had attempted an administrative side of it. So I think that will help in some of the drafting and formatting moving forward. But really that timeline does come from wanting to make sure that the public has ample opportunity for public input. So we set up a web page, we can send out surveys or mailers to send people to that web page. And I, we haven't done it yet, but I am envisioning it'll be interactive and people can walk through it and maybe we talked about this, I probably shouldn't throw it there because maybe this won't be able to happen, but wouldn't it be really neat if we could have the zoning map up there and people could click and choose what zones they wanted things to be, what zones they wanted parcels to be, so we could get that feedback from people, really how they envision the community, as well as like reviewing those goals, and just the webpage should be interactive and walk them through where the plan is now versus what that public input is, where they want it to move forward, as well as a few like meetings. We should definitely have a town hall, however we can garner that support. So definitely want to give enough time to get that feedback from the community, and then putting it together, I would assume can go fairly smoothly, hopefully quickly. I would recommend that maybe we do a little bit more vetting with those considerations of what the city can and cannot accomplish or is and isn't in scope, because doesn't really seem like that may have occurred in this plan, which is fine. I think for being the first full update in 25 years, they did an amazing job. But just really calling back down to level of this is our vision for the next 10 years of where we're headed. And then here are some things that we can look at. So I think that is probably an important piece, is to have that vetting in the end by the Planning Commission and the council, and then adoption of the plan. So I'd say 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we would all agree. I think it needs to be some sort of actionable reality check, and not some pie in the sky dreamy document. That's great. We can have a little bit of that somewhere. I don't know where you put that. You can call the section for dreamers or whatever you want. But yeah, I think it needs to come down to the brass tacks of, there's a lot of communities that are in survival mode right now, and we're going to be considered one of them if we don't start making changes here real soon. So, I mean, that's common sense for everybody. So, yeah, dreams are only going to get you so far. We need some reality and some real money and some action to come into the community to make sure that we're around for another, 20, 30, 40, 50 years or 100 years. So, Otherwise, we're gonna start going by the wayside like all the rest of the small communities in Alaska that have no base left and no economy. So, all right, what do the rest of you guys think on conversation surrounding the comprehensive plan?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I agree with you 100% on what you had just mentioned. It's why I had brought this up kind of at the and towards the end of our last meeting or work session of needing to really kind of go back and make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse. And that's me putting myself in the middle of not even really making a decision on how we got here on the rezoning we're looking at, but making sure that we're doing our due diligence to not open up a can of worms is, I guess, the easiest way to put it, especially now hearing a lot of the comprehensive plan that I didn't, even know about of all the different rezoning, which is not, I'm going to say good or bad, but that when we make one decision that is based off of just because it's there in that plan, that is okay if we've decided if that plan is relevant and we're ready to start making those changes. And so I think it is really important to simplify, make sure there are things that we can do, things the community wants to have happen, and then make it happen. And that's what I want to make sure that we're doing, not looking at each situation on its own right now, but not saying yay or nay to that, but we have an obligation as the public servants to go through the right channels to get there. And we've this one channel's been skipped. And I think that even in the last few years, it's what the staff has helped us do on even cleaning up codes and a lot of things that have been not followed or overlooked to make sure that that it's fair for everybody. Because I don't want to have to put ourselves in a situation where we say, yes, let's do this because of this. And then we start getting overloaded of having to make a bunch of these decisions that may be good or bad, but it's because it's in this plan and making sure that we're making the right decisions for everybody in the community. So I would love to, especially with a 6-month timeline, that was definitely way quicker than I expected something like going through the comprehensive plan would be. And I think having it make more sense to people as well is going to make it easier and clearer for us to make decisions and justify them and everyone to understand. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Ashley. Anyone else?
Yep, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I like this conversation we're having right now. I think it has true merit, and I think it's a process we need to work through. And I would agree with our city manager to go through the comprehensive plan and find out what we as a city are not even going to look at. Just eliminate stuff that's not in our purview. Make it simpler, make it clear. And as the mayor, as you said, there's a lot of fluff. But we need a plan for our community that's clear cut and break it down in parts. So I'm very pleased about this conversation. It's been a long time coming. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Fair, Cap.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Hey, I'm on board with updating the plan. I just have some concerns for the city staff. Did you get any kind of estimate from AML what they charged for?
Excellent question. So the first time around, we got an estimate for the overall changes that we requested, it was like 80-something thousand, but they would do it at a discount of like 64,000, which is why I went back and had a discussion with them. I said, that's not realistic for us budget wise. Nils was there, who's the director of AML, and he was fantastic. And he said, no, I think we can work with you. We can make it more realistic. Sat down with him and a couple of the other people who would work on the plan, really narrowed down the things that we'd like to see, that snapshot, the web page, the public process. That's going to be really the majority of the work anyways. And then the plan formatting. The other stuff we can do in-house. And he said, well, to simplify this for everybody, let's work through this process with you guys just step by step. And we'll talk it out and we'll formulate a budget as we go. So I did follow up with one of the individuals who would work with us and say, well, I really do want a cost estimate for these 4 things. I'm waiting to hear back. And then, like I said, I'm also waiting to hear from the borough how much they will have available. I know they're coming to the end of the fiscal year like we are. He said he thought the plan director said he thought there might be some money in it for this year. And I said, well, how about, you throw 5 to 10,000 in this year and then maybe another 5 to 10,000 or more in it for next fiscal year. So as they go through that process, we'll see what that sounds like for the borough. Of course, he has to have approval from the mayor to do that, but there will be some support and then the rest would be on the city.
Okay, well, that's kind of my concern with that. And I think, I think it's in our best interest to renew that plan as soon as possible. But I have some, like I said, some genuine concerns with the city workload. I'd like to see an estimate. And then the other thing is I don't want to see it railroad our budget process for the year with the amount of work that Heidi has to do. But anyways, now you understand my issue with it. But if we can find the money, let's get it moving.
Yeah, thank you, John. Harmony?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with a lot of what's been said here. I was unable to attend the previous meeting, but caught up on the minutes. And this has been an ongoing conversation throughout the community for a while now. And my stance continues to stay the same as it has throughout the discussion, both as a community member, as a council member, and just discussing with fellow community members the topic. I don't think that it is wise of us to start changing codes piecemeal to accommodate 1 or 2 or 3. I understand in a community as small as ours, 3 people can represent a large percentage of a community, but I do like the idea of us taking the time and allocating some monies towards professional development and help in a new plan and looking at it piece by piece and how it affects, future generations. When I got on this council, I was the youngest person on it. And since I've been on it, we've had 3 more younger individuals come in one go. Like as a young person who's trying to get a foothold in this community and trying to look towards the future, I don't think that it's a bright one if we start. I think you can only put so many huge view blocking waterfront mansions out there and maintain a year-round community. At the end of the day, the people who come here 3 weekends a year aren't volunteering on the city council. They're not applying to clear the roads. They're not unblocking frozen water pipes. I think anybody who pays taxes to own property has the right to due process. But we as public officials also have the responsibility of making sure that the due process is followed and that we are taking the entire conversation into consideration. So I guess that's just me agreeing with the other. Ooh, good job, you guys.
Can I eat right now?
Yeah, that's fine, Oliver. You guys, yes, please. I came back here for a reason. Go that way.
Can I eat this right now, Mom?
Yes, Tilly. Agreeing with the wiser, seasoned voices, Vivian, the people who have been around since the previous census plan. It's a beautiful dream. I think there's a lot of things that are achievable, but other things that need maybe a more professional eye to help us through. I think that that's also something that we need to consider very seriously as a city for our planning and zoning committee as well. A lot of our committees are run by volunteers, and I think having some professional development would be wise. I am not in favor of changing the zoning at this time. I do not think it is for the best for the public in general.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. And I think one thing too, just going through the comp plan too, Heidi, and looking at your changes. Yeah, we got to remember here too. I mean, we're not asking, I think in my mind, I don't want to see an entirely new plan. I don't want to see all new pictures, all new formatting, all that. I think how we save money is we look at the changes and we keep it very simple, right? I mean, this is a plan update. And to keep it within budget, we just need to keep it realistic. We've got a great foundation to build off of. It's the report card of what, your red, green, yellows of what we've actually done. Let's look at stuff that's out of scope, get rid of it, remove it from the plan, and then come up with an actionable list based on some of the stuff that we have done in our CIP. Certainly the economic discussion, the economy discussion, that's a huge one that I think will probably drive most of our decisions. So yeah, I think we can do this in, let's call it 6 to 9 months. 6 probably is optimistic. 9's probably more realistic by the time we have a finished product. But I think if we got the ball rolling here in the next council meeting or two, we could get some stuff happening. And then especially you guys, we've got the next 3 months are going to be 4 months are going to be, stuck in budget discussions, but there's no reason we can't, pick away at this, even while we're doing budget, and then if we've got some other people helping us in the background and, maybe throw some community meetings in here or there. I think we can, and then by fall, when the summer's calmed down again, we can hit it hard and heavy and get things wrapped up, early mid fall there sometime. So I think this is a reality actually.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just one.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. I also appreciate Councilmember Kennedy's concern about budget. I too think about the budget. And as you said, Mayor Campbell, that we as a council can kind of beat ourselves through this and go through what needs to be discussed and kind of break it down with the team and not spend a whole lot of money. Because as you said, we've got a great document. It just needs to be moved around a little bit and the process has already started. So I think we can do a great job with what we have in front of us and not cost a whole bunch of money. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, just to kind of build on what your comments too, like when I go in, Heidi, I look at a lot of your markups in here that you did. I mean, there was on the original plan, there's a lot of nice words in here, right? Let's take some of that fluffy stuff, and I'm not being mean or nice or any of that. Let's just take some of the fluffy stuff and actually put it into some meaningful language that actually means something that's actionable, right? Not just feel good type words. I just don't think that's going to get us anywhere. So take that for whatever it's worth. I mean, maybe easier said than done, right? I know there, we have to come up with some agreement that everyone's gonna, or not everyone, the majority of the folks are gonna, get supportive and be behind for a final product here. So,
Mr. If I may.
yeah.
And the other piece to this is also the planning commission involvement. So between AML, planning commission, the Seldovia City Council and administration, I do think that we can get the ball rolling on this. And then of course, just reminding everybody that we really do want that public involvement. So that'll be a large chunk of it. I don't think the formatting, like you said, if we're not changing a lot of that, and we're just updating some of that introduction pieces and the vision, I don't think that's going to be hard. I think the time consuming part's going to really be hearing from the public.
Yeah, and obviously that'll probably be the most complex piece of this too, right? Because that's where we hit when the, yeah, well, it's pretty normal. When the public gets involved, that's where it starts to get complex, right? Because there's so many differing opinions, and that's, I guess at the end of the day, that's democracy, and that's just how it works in our world. So, and that's fine. I mean, that's obviously what we need we need pros and cons, and then we need to come to figure out how we reach consensus on some of this. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
sure.
So as we're talking about this, just a thought as we're coming to what our decision will be tonight. I don't know how people's feelings would be on even though the property owners have come to us with their justification that it's what's in the comp plan. And I would say it would be kind of this, unbeknownst probably them, that it was this awkward time that we'd already started this conversation of things needing to be revisited, is rather than just being a yay or a nay on that. I feel like a way to be you say a good neighbor in a sense, and trying to say like working with us in this process is, even though that's the only justification, since we're saying we're going to be revisiting this, is saying that offering a moratorium or conditional use, if there was something that is in the back of their mind of why they're wanting this rezoning in that time frame of, as we're working through this, and then that would maybe fast track us to, if it stays in the comprehensive plan, that those would rezone. And I don't know if this is something that makes sense, that then it would go there, or if it doesn't, I don't know if that's something. Heidi's giving me a look. Would it make any sense at all, or if that's opening another can of worms? I'm just trying to think of ideas of, like, I always put myself in, in the other's shoes and wondering, just what that looks like. And because I kind of go back to that, we weren't given a reason why, but maybe there is something else reason why that would come up there. And that's, I mean, also 9 months is not very long if they're, everything they're meeting the current requirements, but that would be my, if it were like my offer. So.
Yeah, I mean, the way I
On
understand
that.
it, go ahead.
Oh no, opening up to thoughts now that I brought that thought upon us.
I guess one thing to comment on that is, yeah, right now, the way I see is I did not see anything or in the application or discussions that would prohibit them from doing what they're wanting to do, right? Obviously, you can have a business there now. You're supposed to have a business there, so that's what everyone's doing. Yeah, and unless there's something else that they want to do that is not permitted right now, the only other thing would be to sell it as, a piece of property that didn't require a business. That's basically the only other thing that I could think of right now. So I think they're in compliance. They would still be in compliance going forward. And yeah, I think that, I mean, I agree with you. At the end of the day, it doesn't really make sense to try to vote it up or down when we know that it's part of the overall process on what we need to do here. Because I think with a little common sense and a little, some community discussions, maybe the consensus is to leave it. Maybe there's a broader discussion on what is really happening in our community with businesses in the downtown area and all of that. And, people are ready to make a change. So, yeah, I'm open to doing whatever you guys want, but I think it would make sense to move forward with the comprehensive plan discussion and get the new product, taken care of, and then take care of the entire community in one action rather than, piecemealing it, like you said. Heidi, maybe real quick, let's see, is there anyone, Liz, from the public that wanted to weigh in tonight?
Like Miss Laurel Hiltz has her hand up. Go
Okay.
ahead and unmute her.
Hello,
Glad to be able to participate. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Took lots of notes as we went throughout the work session. I think that the intent of the agenda item on the council packet, it looks like, or I'm sorry, it's sending me a note, so I wasn't sure what I needed to do. But that the packet looks like it's to whether you want to consider to bring the discussion back to as an agenda item for the future, but just a reminder that currently the motion was not passed. And so there's no present action being decided. People are just saying, if it came forward, if we decided tonight to bring it forward, this is where we might or might not stand. But tonight would be just a discussion of whether or not you're bringing it forward. But with that said, I just wanted to bring a couple notes if it helps for clarification. One, in the chart that the city manager put together, the first chart that you reviewed, if it was possible to include in there, I think that in the meeting in which there was a lengthy discussion, that the city manager presented information that came from the borough planner about what the tool is of the comprehensive report. And what was presented was that it's a guide. It's in essence a visioning document, but it's not an ordinance. It's not zoning. It's not a set in stone piece. And a lot of the things that are being presented at the planning and zoning level from the chairperson and from the people who are making the appeal for the revisiting of your vote has been that comprehensive plan is a set in stone piece. And I really am so thankful for the percentages that have been shown and how cool that 55% of something has been implemented in one way or another, versus 45% not. And I mean, to be able to see that visually, Heidi, was pretty spectacular. So, and then just with that, all of that, I love the idea of bringing in the borough planner or the planning commission chair to give guidance to the commission. It's our planning and zoning commission, and better coach them and maybe have staff be part of a workshop training session for the team so that folks really continue to look to them as external brains and guidance and support as we make these big decisions for our community. And finally, Mr. Mayor, you know how much I love to engage with you and shake your hand and catch up with you. I want to say today I strongly disagree with a statement that not much has changed in where we've come the last 30 years. And I know we're speaking maybe from a sense of there's a lot that needs to happen, but when I look at the community of Seldovia, prior to 30 years ago, there were incredible things already taking place, whether it be Arts Council, Chamber of Commerce, tribal government, the NOAA lab, the school, canneries, church, library, fire, EMS, law enforcement, gardens, parks and recs, events, and I can go on and all the businesses and all the volunteerism. But in the last 30 years, if we take a 30-year snapshot and we look at the businesses that have come in, the committees that have taken charge, like renovating the cemetery, that's spectacular. SOS, I don't know when exactly they started, but they've been strong as a presence in the last 30 plus years. The SURSA board was established where people took on a financial burden to see that a community center be made available. The scenic byway was implemented. The preschool was formed. Medical services were greatly expanded in the community. We even have a community health center standing today. New trails were added. Technology has grown exponentially. We've seen Airbnbs grow, agency influx coming greater and greater every day. And so I just want to make sure we don't lose that incredible things are happening in the community because of the spirit of the individuals who reside in the city limits and in the surrounding area, and that we keep that optimistic spirit going forward. And I'm speaking from Colorado, so I get it. I'm not in town. I'm not there to pour my enthusiasm but just FYI, I'm still actively working and coordinating activities and events on a daily basis. So just wanted to say all of that. Phew, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Laurel. Appreciate that. I definitely won't argue with you. We could probably have a good, colorful discussion on many things that we agree or disagree with. So yes, I know there are many things that are good. And I try to be an optimist, but at the same time, I look around and I look at the reality of some things too. It's tough. It's tough in a small community. So that's my only point. I mean, we've done amazing things. Yes, we have. And I think we will continue to do more amazing things, but we gotta have a clear vision on where we're going. So that's my only 2 cents on that. So, all right. Anyone else from the public, Liz? Thank you,
Crystal
Laurel.
Collier has her hand up as well.
Okay, great.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my comment. I got a little confused. I thought this was about looking at reconsideration of a vote that had already occurred that did not allow for the zoning. So I assume that that the zoning denial is standing because it hasn't been brought up for reconsideration other than the discussion, which I am in favor of not rezoning that district down there, and not just for waiting for the comp plan, but when you look at this community, if you don't have a viable business district, then it starts to not be so attractive to anybody wanting to come to this area and have a business. And also the city of Seldovia giving up, or potentially hoping to give up, one of the last undeveloped industrial lot is a very sad thing for me to see. um, I started my work at the city of Seldovia as part-time in 1976, and I finished up in 1988. And, the planning and zoning was active then, and we really were looking and seeking how to bring industry to this community, because if you don't, then it will be more difficult to continue to have it thrive. Think we will see a lot of things diminish if the city isn't actively having some property, because it's not readily available through the private sector. And that's why the zoning of the lower end towards the Seldovia Bible Chapel was deemed industrial. And to put a ice rink on it, I mean, my grandkids love to skate on that ice rink, so I'm not opposed to that. But the fact that you are looking to make that a permanent development is, I think that there should be some really deep, good look at that and see what that would do to this community to turn it into another park. The city of Seldovia has many parks, and all of them need to be maintained. And thank goodness there's volunteers to do that. But if you develop one more, you're going to be looking for more volunteers, and eventually you look at there's no industry property to bring a business into this community, and jobs are hard and will be harder to find as fishing, waxes and wanes. So that was all I had to say, and thank you for not reconsidering that zoning and putting it to another vote.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Anyone else, Liz?
No, that'd be everybody, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we have, yeah, and again, the discussion kind of morphed there, obviously, because I mean, we have not had consensus on item 7 of the worksheet. I don't think we will get consensus. So yeah, and as a segue part of that discussion, there's been a movement to obviously talk about, if something's going to happen, it needs to be done on a broader level. And as part of that, we need to look at the comp plan to see what and where we're going to go. And I think, to a couple points, that Crystal made about the industrial lots and stuff, I know that's been a big topic of discussion, and there's been folks, both for and against about, doing away with that property down there. So I'm sure a good robust discussion will bring a lot of good points out of the woodwork on that. So All right, well, we're getting close to 6 here, so obviously no action in this meeting. Good discussion though on the worksheet and on the topic of the comprehensive plan and taking a look at that going forward. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the work session, and then we'll come back at 6:00. If it's 5:59 now, we'll come back at 6:05. Everyone can get up, stretch, and then we'll get started with the regular council meeting. So we'll go ahead and stand in adjournment, and then we'll be back on the new link, Liz, or the same link?
Open the same link.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you, everyone.